When most people go shopping for a hatchback, they're looking for something small, economical, practical, and affordable. This, on the other hand, is what you get when the engineers at Audi design a hatchback over a few drinks. My name's Nish, and you're watching The Word on Cars. I'm going to show you why the RS3 is a hardcore hatch with one problem. But before I do that, this generation of RS3, which is based on the Audi A3, was released in 2022, and after just 2 years, Audi's giving this hatch, or sportback as they call it, a refresh for 2025. And that means that the current model will become a little more appealing in the coming year when prices start to hopefully fall. Speaking of prices, the base price of the RS3 was a shade over 110,000 Australian dollars before options. I say was because you can't get one of these from Audi anymore. You'll have to wait for the 2025 refresh if you want a brand spanker. And the RS3 doesn't have too many competitors out there in the wild either. The Mercedes-Benz designers must have also been drunk when they designed the A45 AMG. It's another mean little machine with a price tag that's over 22 grand more than the RS3, and that's before you add any options. Oh, and BMW designers clearly don't drink on the job because they don't have any crazy little hatches to compete with these two. Instead, you'll have to settle for the two-door M2 Coupe, which looks like it was designed by a 5-year-old. You either love it or hate it. Now, this is usually where I show you the styling and show you around the inside of the RS3. Instead, I'm going to take you for a spin first and show you what this hot hatch can do on the road. So, driving the Audi RS3. Let me tell you, this car is a weapon. It is ridiculously, ludicrously, insanely fast. I mean, just wow. I'm genuinely saying this. This car is insanely fast. A hatchback should not be able to do this. If you love your red light Grand Prix, you're going to be winning those most of the time because you'll be hard pressed to find a car lining up next to you that can do what this car does. It is stupendously fast. I'm running out of words to describe how fast this car is, but it is insanely fast. It's fast. And the reason it's so fast, if I can take a second to compose my thoughts, is because this has a 2.5 litre, 5-cylinder turbocharged engine under the hood. Now, Audi had this in the previous generation RS3 as well. They've tweaked this engine so it has a little bit more torque. So the numbers are 294 kilowatts of power, 500 newton meters of torque. That's gone up by 20 torques since the refresh of this, or well, since the new RS3 came out in 2022. And man, I mean, really, it was already a fantastic engine, but this has just really raised the bar even more. You certainly feel the torque in this car when you put your foot into it. It just, oh man, that is quick. That is insanely quick. Now, Audi says this thing will do 0 to 100 in 3.8 seconds, but my ass, this is 3.8 seconds. This is quicker than that. I mean, even without using launch control, it gets right there. Oh, man, and the noise, the 5-cylinder engine in this car makes such a unique noise compared to a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder. It is so beautiful. It's such a symphony going on in front of you and behind you. I mean, this thing is fantastic to listen to. That is ridiculous levels of sound and speed in this car. It's brutal. It's brutal. A hatchback, like I said, shouldn't be able to perform like this, but the RS3 has always been a little supercar fighter, really, in a way. I mean, look, it's not super high levels of speed, but it's pretty close. You could have so much fun behind the wheel of this car. The acceleration is crazy, and it does it in a way where it's not awfully brutal. I mean, it is a little bit angry, but I wouldn't say it's crazy brutal or anything like that. It is, like I've sort of described Audis before, clinically fast. You know, anyone can get in here, put your foot into it, and just launch this car, and it flies. Absolutely flies. Now, from a fuel consumption point of view, you would think this level of performance would mean that you compromise on fuel efficiency, but you actually don't. You get 8.3 litres per 100 kilometres of fuel consumption in this, so it's not bad on the juice. 98 octane given it's turbocharged. But good luck though trying to drive this thing nicely, because this is one of the only cars I've ever driven where I've really struggled to drive it nicely, because it just wants you to go constantly. It's just so addictive. You just want to keep planting your foot into it, and it just delivers. It delivers, and it doesn't really run out of steam either. I mean, I haven't hit any speeds where I've noticed that it's starting to taper off, but it just seems to just go and go and go. Now, what's interesting is for the 2025 model, the RS3 is getting a updated engine tune and transmission tune. So it'll be very interesting to see what the performance of that car is. Generally speaking, you find with Audi's refreshes, they drop a couple of tenths of a second when it comes to 0 to 100 times. So I'm very keen to see what they do with the 2025. If this thing is so, it's going to be pretty difficult for Audi to do any better than what this car already does. And on top of the performance this engine has, Audi throws in a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, the S-tronic gearbox, and that thing's rapid. I mean, it changes gears so quickly up and down, makes driving this car an absolute pleasure. And what I love about this gearbox is the gearing in this is so short, which forces you to bang up and down gears when you are going around corners. So it really is an engaging drive thanks to this gearbox. I must say, in comfort mode, this thing just is unobtrusive. It does its thing in the background. I mean, you know, hallmarks of a DCT, you can feel some of those gear changes even in automatic, but you know, it's not uncomfortable. And also being a DCT, off the line, when you're not using launch control, you put your foot into it, and there is a moment of hesitation where it goes, oh, you want to go? And then it goes. But when it goes, it goes. Now, if you're using launch control, that's not an issue because you're revving the engine out, you're already in the power band, you launch it, the thing hooks up, and you're gone. But if you are just driving this and off a light, you will find a moment of hesitation, but really, it's nothing to complain about. I mean, this thing is just so rapid. It's fantastic. And the paddles in this car are also less button feeling and more mechanical feeling. Although I will say, and I'm not sure if it's just this car, the left paddle feels more mechanical than the right one. The right one feels a bit more like a button. So I'm not sure whether Audi's done that purposely, but nevertheless, I mean, geez Louise, this gearbox, this engine, that sound, far out, this thing is insane. From a handling perspective, this thing in RS performance mode is stiff. I mean, it's meant to be stiff. In a performance setting, it must be stiff when you want that level of grip and that level of cornering prowess and that level of control. So yeah, it's stiff. It's really expected. And I think it's stiff in a really good way. Now, even in RS performance mode, it does provide feedback of what the road is actually doing under you. Put this into comfort mode though, and it really does iron things out. It truly does become quite comfortable. Now, I will say it's not as comfortable as an A3 is, but it's pretty darn close. So having dual personalities in this car, comfort actually works quite well. You could daily drive this easily, no issues at all. Now, Quattro. Audis have Quattro. This is an RS model. This obviously has Quattro. Fantastic all-wheel drive system, tons of grip. You can push this thing around corners, hangs on for dear life. Absolutely fantastic. Now, what Audi's also done with this RS3 is throw in a trick diff into the back. Now, that takes 50% of the torque into the back wheels, and of that 50%, you can transfer 100% to each of the outer wheels. So that makes for great fun, makes for great cornering, and this thing really, it's no surprise that it handles so well. This does also have torque vectoring, so when you are going around a corner, it'll break the inside wheels and essentially slingshot the outside around that corner. So you actually do feel that in this car when you're going really hard around a corner. And also thanks to that rear diff, this car has drift mode, or Audi calls it torque rear mode, which I don't know why they've called it that. Why not just call it drift mode like everyone else does? But Audi being Audi, I like to complicate things a little bit, but that's okay. What that is at the end of the day is a drift mode. So if you want to go sideways using this car, you can. I mean, it's a nice little thing to have if you are planning on taking this down to a track, which let's face it, I don't think most people that buy an RS3 will be doing, but it's always nice to be able to tell your friends that, hey, I have a drift mode. Tons of grip, absolutely ridiculous levels of grip in this thing. You can bang this through corners and really it does hold on incredibly well. It's quite amazing how this RS3 can do what it does. Just the way it does cling to a corner, it just makes this car, and I've said this before about other cars where it's a point and shoot, right? I think this car is truly the definition of a point and shoot car because you don't really have to think all that much. I mean, you essentially just need to come into the corner and turn the steering wheel, and this thing absolutely flies through the corners. It is painful, actually. I mean, you got to hang on to the steering wheel, and thank goodness these seats are so good because they do hold you in place fantastically. So the grip is phenomenal. I mean, look, just point, shoot, hold on. Unfortunately, it's not all unicorns and rainbows behind the wheel of the RS3 because it suffers from what most other Audis suffer from, which is a little bit of understeer. Now, on days like today where the conditions are near perfect, you've got the sun out, the road surface is completely dry, it's less of an issue. You can really put this into a corner and it will grip. Push it beyond its limits though, even in the dry, and you'll find that the front end does slide out ever so slightly, but it's easy to pull it back in again. Where it probably matters the most is in the wet. If you are driving around corners quite quickly in the wet, it will understeer. And look, it's what the RS3 is. It's no different to any other car. You need to understand its limitations, and that is one of the RS3's limitations. The other thing about this car that I'm not a huge fan of is the steering feel. The steering itself works fine, I'll talk about that in a second, but it feels numb and disconnected from the front wheels. Now granted, you've got an electric steering rack sitting behind all of this, so it is to a certain extent disconnected from the front wheels, but other manufacturers mask that much better. It doesn't load up when you go around a corner until you're really going hard around a corner. Then you do start to feel a little bit of that coming through the steering wheel, but otherwise it feels consistently the same. Regardless of whether you're going down the road in a straight line or going around a corner, the feel is very much the same. Having said that though, the steering feel, the weighting of the steering is perfect in RS Performance mode, and stick it into comfort mode, lightens up beautifully, so makes driving this thing quite easy. The front end responsiveness though is also really, really good. I mean, it is so agile. It changes directions very, very quickly. In fact, if you're not used to driving a car with a steering rack that's so quick, it's going to take you a tick to adjust to it. And what's also remarkable, even though it lacks that feel I was talking about, it's really precise and sharp. You can place this car so well. I mean, it's quite unbelievable how quick this is and how in control you feel behind the steering wheel of this car. So, all in all, it may not necessarily have the feel that people look for in a steering setup, but when it comes to control, this thing is fantastic. And lastly, we have the brakes in the RS3, which, to be honest with you, work brilliantly. Now, quite surprisingly, this little car, even though it is quite small with a small footprint, weighs 1,640 kilograms, and that's a tare weight, so it's not exactly light. So Audi has actually given this thing pretty good brakes. You get 6 piston calipers up front with 375mm discs, and single pistons in the back with 310mm discs. And they're ample in controlling the speed in this car. Slows down very quickly when you are going around corners, really gives you confidence to slam on the brakes to slow it down and get back on the power. So they work quite well. I haven't felt any fade or anything like that. I think the brakes in this are really well suited for the performance that this car offers and its weight predominantly. Now Audi did also offer a carbon ceramic package as part of the RS Dynamic package, which gave you 380mm carbon ceramic discs up front. But that cost an eye-watering $13,000. They did also throw in a higher top speed as part of that package. This is limited to 250 kilometers per hour. That increased it to 290 kilometers per hour. But to be honest with you, carbon ceramics are great if you're planning on tracking the car and doing it regularly. This thing would be perfectly fine around a track with these steel discs. So 13 grand on carbon ceramics, in my opinion, is a bit of a waste of money. It's not worth it. In terms of how the brakes in this feel, the pedal feel is sensational. You can modulate it quite well with your right foot, and it's quite progressive, so you can drive it quite comfortably. And when you do get on it and you're pushing this thing around corners like I am right now, it is confidence inspiring. You don't feel like you need any more performance or any more braking performance than this has to offer. So the braking works perfectly. So I've shown you how the RS3 drives. Now it's time to take you around and show you the rest of it. Unlike Audi's usual MO when it comes to styling, the RS3 definitely stands out. It's not subtle. I mean, just look at it. The RS3 gets an angry front end with sharp matrix LED headlamps that even say RS3. It's not like Audi to do fun stuff like this, but I like it. A massive gloss black grille, which I would say is quite bold and in your face. Functional vents on either side that are also massive, and gloss black Audi rings and RS3 badges, which are part of the carbon package this car has, which will set you back an extra $7,400. You can option this on its own though for $700. You get carbon mirror caps and side skirts with carbon inlays on the sides, also part of the carbon package, functional vents on the front fenders that give this a more muscular look, and 19-inch Audi Sport matte black wheels. You can get gloss black wheels for an extra $500. And like I said, the front tires are 20mm wider than the rears. Usually it's the other way around, but this has a front wheel bias setup, so it needs all the front end grip it can get. Around the back, there's a carbon roof spoiler, again part of the carbon package, an aggressive rear bumper with a grille that runs right across it, non-functional though, a diffuser that's subtle compared to the rest of this hot hatch, and these massive exhaust tips which the exhaust sit behind. And in case you didn't catch what this thing sounds like when I had it on the road, this 5-banger definitely has a unique sound to it. It's so good. Now, you do get a bunch of colors to choose from. What you're looking at here is Daytona Gray, but there's Glacier White, Kimura Gray, Mythos Black, and for those that really want to stand out, Kermit the Frog Green, and my favorite, Winnie the Pooh Yellow. Audi, I dare you to change the names of these colors. I double dare you. And for anyone that's curious, the 2025 refresh will bring updated front and rear ends along with headlamps and tail lamps that have a restyled lighting signature. When it comes to the interior, the RS3 retains the same smart interior of the A3, but it's been spruced up in RS3 fashion. It's very sharp and angular in here, and the quality, fit and finish is nothing less than what you expect from Audi. It's solid, and materials like the suede inserts on the doors and brushed aluminium touches throughout really give this cabin a premium look and feel. This one has matte carbon fiber inlays across the dashboard, which is part of the carbon package. You get brushed aluminium without it, and an Alcantara wrapped steering wheel with red stitching, seat belts with red edges, red center bars on the vents, which are otherwise brushed aluminium, floor mats with red stitching, and seat shoulders in red thanks to the $2,150 RS design package. Now, if red's not your color though, you can always opt for green for everything I've just mentioned. And on the topic of seats, the RS3 gets these quilted sports seats with electric adjustment, including massage with 3 programs and different intensity levels that have fantastic bolstering for when you're whipping around corners, and great back and thigh support thanks to extendable thigh extension, so they're very comfortable too. 2025 will bring a few updates into the interior as well. A brand new steering wheel with a flat top and bottom, the option to add carbon fiber bucket seats, which I'm sure will cost more than they're actually worth, and door cards that are lit from behind. Space is also plenty in this little car for my 5'9" self. Great headroom, legroom, and knee room. The steering column does get tilt and reach adjustments, so unless you're Shaquille O'Neal, you'll fit. In terms of infotainment, Audi throws in the same 10.1-inch touchscreen that you find in their smaller products like the A3 and Q3. It does the job, but it isn't the most intuitive system to use. As an example, you can't adjust audio settings from the source of audio you're looking at. Instead, you have to go digging in the settings to find those. And you get this physical control which does a few things, including adjust volume, but it's a pain in the ass to use. You have to swipe your finger in a circular motion, and that ain't easy to do when you're riding shotgun. The RS3 also gets a RS monitor, which is also hidden away under car settings, but it is handy to keep on top of engine and transmission temps, G-force and tire pressures. And there's wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in here as well, so I doubt anyone will be using Audi's interface. For music, there's a 680-watt 15-speaker B&O stereo in here with treble, bass, and surround sound adjustment. No adjustment for the mid-range though, but it sounds pretty damn good. Then there's the 12.3-inch virtual cockpit, as Audi calls it, which is still fantastic. This is starting to show its age though, not because it doesn't work well or up to modern standards, but because we're used to seeing it. Audi's had this in their cars for quite a few years now. but it still works great, lots of information, easy to use, and you get many views to choose from, including a RS view. You can change attack from sport, performance, and runway views, depending on how you're feeling, but again, that's hidden away in the infotainment system. You can't change it through the drive mode screen, which would have made more sense. And you can't assign the different tacks to different RS modes either. Also silly. In RS mode, there's another G-force meter and power and torque gauges to remind you that you're in a performance car. And while we're talking about drive modes, the RS3 gets a standard Audi drive modes: efficiency, comfort, auto, and dynamic modes, as well as RS-specific modes. RS individual, so you can customize things the way you want. RS performance, which puts everything into maximum performance, and RS torque, which, like I mentioned, is when you want to get this thing going sideways. And there's also a good head-up display that shows you navigation, driver assistance information, and a shift light, which, like I said, you need with this hot hatch because it revs so fast. The dual zone climate control in here gets its own bank of buttons, including buttons for the heated seats that wrap around the display, so that's convenient. You don't have to fiddle around the screen to access those. There's another bank of buttons under the climate controls for drive modes, traction control, auto start stop, hazard lights, parking sensors, and park assist. The center console's also been decluttered. You'll find the engine start stop button and electronic handbrake here, along with the stubby gear selector, which is actually quite ergonomic and easy to use. Don't expect to find this in the 2025 model though. Audi's replaced it with a slider, which I imagine works the same way. Push it forward for reverse and neutral, back for drive, or to put the gearbox into sport, and there's a button for going into park. The RS3 is also loaded with driver assistance systems: adaptive cruise control with stop and go, active lane keeping, front and rear emergency braking with rear cross traffic alert, blind spot monitoring, and a 360-degree camera system with parking sensors and multiple views to choose from, which, like I said, includes park assist, so that takes the headache of parking out of your hands. And when it comes to storage, the RS3 gets a felt-lined glove box on the dashboard. Now, it's not very deep at all, but it does get card and coin holders on the lid, which is nice. A wireless charging pad for phones on the center console, including 2 USB-C ports, 2 cup holders to keep drinks in place that can be folded away when you're not using them, a wee bit of storage under the center armrest, which you can slide forward when you want to use it as an armrest, and practical and usable bins in the front doors with bottle holders. And in the back seats, we have the same materials. Audi hasn't skimped out on any of those back here. The seats are quilted like the front, very comfortable and supportive, and there's brushed aluminium and Alcantara appointments on the doors. Space is good too for a sportsback. Headroom is plenty. Legroom isn't too bad unless you're sitting in the middle thanks to the hump on the floor, but passengers on either side can tuck their feet under the front seats. It's not enough to stretch out, but it is comfortable. And knee room is also decent. My knees are nowhere near the front seats, which are set to my driving position. And although there are 3 seats back here, it's not for 3 adults. It's tight. But you do get ISOFIX mounting points for the outboard seats and top tether mounts across all seats for the kids. Features-wise, nothing groundbreaking back here. There's vents for heating and cooling, a couple of USB-C ports, netting on the backs of both front seats, bins in the doors that double up as bottle holders, and cup holders that are hidden away in the center armrest. And when it comes to throwing your things in the boot, the RS3 gets a powered tailgate that opens up to reveal 282 litres of storage. So it's not a massive amount of space, but when you lift the cargo floor up, which is kept in place with these neat latches on either side, that's smart thinking. You do get a little more space under the floor around the battery and tire inflator kit. And you can drop the 40-20-40 split seats by pulling the latches on the seats. No latches for that back here to increase space to 1,104 litres. And you can drop the independent pass-through for long items like skis without having to drop the outboard seats. Aside from a 12-volt power outlet, a couple of cubbies on either side, and cargo tie downs, there's not much else to see back here. So I've shown you how the RS3 drives and everything it has, but is it worth the money? And herein lies a problem with the RS3. Yes, it's a fantastic sportback. It really is. It's ridiculously quick. It sounds fantastic. It handles very well. That is, until you push it beyond its limits and it understeers. It's comfortable. You get Audi's great build quality. I mean, there are plenty of reasons to buy one, except maybe for the steering, which is very much Audi and I'm, but even then, it's precise. The biggest problem the RS3 has then has nothing to do with the RS3 itself. It's the price. It's expensive. The Golf R, which shares the same architecture as the RS3, same trick diff in the back, same drift mode, same all-wheel drive system, Audi calls it Quattro and VW calls it 4Motion, costs a shade under 70 grand. And if you're wondering why I'm comparing the RS3 to the Golf R instead of the S3, it's because the S3 didn't get the same rear differential that the RS3 and Golf R share, but that's changing. Guessing Audi worked out that the RS3 and Golf R had too much in common. And sure, the Golf R has 1 cylinder less under the hood, it gets a more Volkswagen-like interior, and it's a whole second slower to 100 kilometers per hour, but it costs 40 grand less. So is the RS3 worth the money? Absolutely. The 5-pot in the RS3 makes driving this car an occasion each and every time, and it's agile and sharp around the corners. The RS3 then isn't about the money. This car is all about the way it makes you feel, the emotional response. Even the ordinary drivers will feel like superstars behind the wheel of the RS3. Thanks for watching.